Hey everyone, welcome to Three Mystics at a Round Table, and we're delighted to be back with Gary and Sally of the Soul Explorers podcast to have another fun discussion on spiritual topics and spiritual growth topics, because that's what we're all about as mystics. We really love going into that inner world and seeing what we find, kind of like a treasure chest. And it only gets deeper, I think, as we grow older. And I think that's sort of a fun journey. Once you get past clearing all your stuff, you're really seeing, well, what's next, or what we're going to find out or discover next as mystics and as explorers of our inner world. So the topic today that we're going to talk about is our inner teacher. And I wanted to talk about this particular subject because what I'm discovering, and you guys can pipe in here when you feel like it, is that within each of us is our divine self that is our teacher. And right. And sometimes we think of the spiritual journey and our guides and our angels as separate from ourselves when they're actually within ourselves. They are our divine selves. They're not necessarily separate. And so sometimes we can get lost on the spiritual journey as just like religion, God is outside of us. You know, the spiritual journey, if I do this workshop, if I find this guide, if I have this experience, if I go to this healer, and we're still looking on the outside when everything we have is within us. It's only learning how to find the key to open that door to connect with that inner teacher. And that inner teacher is your divine self, and it'll come through you, through the angels, through the guides, through your loved ones, through different methods, and allow that to lead our lives rather than anything external. So what's popping up in your heads with that opening statement?
Well, I would say it's the best teacher.
Mm.
The best teacher is your inner teacher. Now, it's fine, I think, to sort of compare what you're getting from your inner teacher with what others may be teaching. Sometimes you'll agree, sometimes you won't. But bottom line, that inner teacher, we need to learn to trust. So,
And we need to learn to find it,
right.
Yeah.
you know. Go ahead, Sally.
And I think most people, and even if they're not on a spiritual path, if they're just, living their materialist day-to-day lives, whether they know it or not, are following that inner teacher for the most part. And it's just a matter of deciding whether or not that is something that, or at least putting a context around it about whether or not those are just your own thoughts or whether they're inspired in some way, right? And a lot of course, spiritual people, artists, musicians, those kind, they talk about sort of muses or inspiration that seems to come from outside of themselves. And you made a really good distinction that it really is from within, right? And whether or not you make that distinction, is this me or is this someone else that is inspiring me, is maybe less important than the information itself, right? And whether or not it helps you, if it's useful. And over time, I have discovered that while I do often recognize it as being something that's coming from within, or what feels like maybe, a guide, it really is not important to decide who it is that it came from. It really doesn't matter, as long as it's useful, as long as it gives wisdom or a truth that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of just in my, somewhat day-to-day blindness.
Or inspires you in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be an act of creativity. It can be, the encouraging feeling to go on when you're feeling discouraged, um, As a general rule, if it's positive, it is from our helpers in one way or another. If it feels negative, if it's, self-deprecating or even, kind of a level of self-hatred, that is generally our ego. Always that's our ego. It's not coming from either our higher selves or our guides or our angels or however you choose to conceive of that.
Very good. And I appreciate that. That's really useful information. I think that all of us have it. And we've had it since we came in. I can remember being a little girl playing out in the yard, and this car stops over by the corner, and this guy does this. And I got halfway across the yard and I said, don't go there. Don't go talk to that man, And so that was my inner guidance, stopping me, from going. So I think we come in with that inner teacher. Oftentimes it can get lost in the noise. So I encourage people to think about their own journeys of when something said, no, don't go there. And I think a good example of that inner teacher or that inner guide is whenever you go to buy a house, you walk into it and this is the one. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what there's this inner knowing. So then I think would it be fair to frame intuition as our inner teacher?
Sure. Those are just labels we put on it. Intuition, inner teacher, it's all one thing happening, I think.
Right.
And you still have the free will to not pay attention, right? To not listen to that bit of intuition or that prompting. I mean, that's happened to me way more times than I care to admit to. But, I've been told, don't park there. And I'm like, it's fine. What's the problem? I parked there and got broken into, So we do still have free will, even when it comes to deciding whether or not we're going to follow what seems to be coming in as intuition or inspiration, or again, however you choose to perceive of it.
And trust it. And to trust, is that just my own mind or is there something? And I agree with you when you said, Sally, that, it's going to make a shift. Whatever the information is, it's going to be a shift. If I give a example of my own journey, even just today, I've been doing a lot of work on healing my distortions, that I've had through the years, through experiences where I'm here, where I've held emotion that I haven't resolved. And I've been working with my dreams and then allowing them to come up, and one of the things I even worked on today was, and again, I think dreams are also from your inner teacher. I think they also are powerful messengers if we really delve into them and start exploring what they could mean or how they, flow into our lives. But anyway, a memory came up from when I was a teenager, and I realized even back then, because I did not feel unconditional love, I strove to be something. And yet my nature is I'm happier in stillness. I'm happier in, and that was my nature. But the world teaches us we got to do, become this, do our best, strive our best. And I never was a practicing playing my flute person or making the best grades because it wasn't in my nature. But I saw that as a fault in me, And so as I finally figured that out, and then the tears came up and then I heard in my head, stillness is your superpower. And so I was able to go back and reframe that part of my life and talk to that inner teenager that says, you know what, we've got a superpower and nobody can see it. And it's that observer stillness, holding the presence in the world. It doesn't have to be about being the best flute player or the best student, as the world teaches. So it's just little things like that. That's what I call little mini miracles of shifting what we once thought was wrong within ourselves and finding that perhaps that belief was wrong. So, those things happen all the time. So do you have examples of where things have shifted in your journey where you've gone to spirit? And I really want to I think that's important because most people don't even know to ask when we're depressed. Oh, what needs to be healed in me? We're always looking outside of ourselves for the answer, when the answer can come just while you're standing in the shower and a thought pops in your head and you go, oh, I've never thought it that way. So do you have any examples to share? You're muted, Sally.
My apologies. My bird was chirping. I think that for me, it has been about learning to trust more than anything, because, like I said, if you're getting these thoughts or these, maybe suggestions that would seem helpful, and then for whatever reason you decide to reject it, I have almost always come to go, oh, maybe I really should have paid attention to that thought, to that prompting, to whatever it was, because it would have saved me some additional struggle or pain, even down to silly things like, where to park or not park your car, right? So it's just through life experience. I think the biggest shift for me was learning to trust it. Learning when I hear something to say it out loud, right? If I have an intuitive hit that might be significant to someone else, go on ahead and say it, and don't worry about looking silly or being wrong. So yeah, for me, the biggest shift was learning to trust it.
How about you, Gary?
Well, I would say, and it's hard to make this differentiation, but I've gotten information from the inner teacher and guides in different ways. Inner teacher is more an intuitive for me, whereas guides will actually use my name as a sign that it's not my thought. They'll say, Gary, you might want to do this. They never tell me what to do, but they'll make a suggestion, and I'll clairaudiently hear that. And it's probably saved my life more than once. Um, but it doesn't matter, as we said, whether it's your inner teacher or your guides talking to you. Have I gotten off track of what the original question was here?
An experience of where you've had an experience where you've shifted because of the information that has come.
Oh, yes, yes. So I have definitely listened to both the clairaudient and the intuitive hits. And if I don't, I usually end up falling flat on my face. So I've learned to trust them.
Very good. I think, what are some of the ways that our inner teacher or that information, what are some of the ways we can awaken that in us if we feel like, well, I haven't had any of those experiences, why doesn't that happen to me? What are your thoughts on how to get reconnected with that inner guide, which is where everything comes through, whether it's a separate guide or a inner guide or your divine self or the divine source itself? What ways do you think that people can get connected or reconnected? Because I do want to say we come in with it. And would you agree that this world is designed to keep you from going there?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know on that last statement, because this world is designed for our experience, right? And I hesitate to say that somebody's experience where they're feel completely separate, where they retain that feeling of separateness, is wrong for them. I don't know that it is. That said, if you have a desire to connect to that inner knowing, it's about developing that superpower that you were talking about, right? That stillness, that willingness to quiet your internal monologue just enough to see what arises. And that was, for me, becoming aware of that. I mean, I've always had experiences, but again, I'd never really had context for them early in my life. But once it became important for me, it was meditation. Like, meditation was where I went, that's something outside of me. Well, I say outside of me again, it all feels, it is internal because it's in your own head, it's in your heart, it's in your emotion. It's those things that rise up internally, even though sometimes we try to describe it as something that's coming from outside, right? It's interdimensional, I guess is the best way to describe it, right? But it is that stillness, it's that quiet, that superpower that some people do come in with, right? And others have to develop if they have a desire. But the desire is sort of important.
Yeah. And the desire is really important, because if you don't have the desire, you're not going to take the time to go into stillness, to quiet and the mind, so that you can reconnect with that part of your divine self, and I in many ways, I think it's the cosmic joke that it was outside of you when there's only one of us here, and that means it's all inside of you in the first place. And whether we deem it as a guide is separate, or a guide is within us, a fractal of ourself that is helping us on our journey, you're right. It really doesn't matter how you frame it. But when it all comes down to it, there's only one of us here, and we're all just reflections in our inner world and our outer world of our own journey. And so I think it's been important for us to go into separateness, to find our way back, so that we can discover who we are as divine beings. And until you know the opposite of that, you're never going to know that. And that's the whole journey of going into forgetfulness. Like, would that be fair enough to say that we've been connected all along? And it's been going all along. It's been there all along, and there's always been clues. So I don't know about you guys. Have you looked back in your life, and when you felt, even when you didn't feel you were on the intent and desire to awaken, but before that, there was something leading and guiding you somewhere, even when you couldn't see it. And that was your divine self moving you through this journey of what you needed to experience, whether it's separateness, and then saying, I'm really tired of this separateness. Maybe I should ask for help. But I agree. I think it's the intent and desire is the key first, then learning to go into stillness in the meditation. Any thoughts there?
Well, I think what you were saying before about the fact that some people don't feel they have these experiences, I think everyone does. But have we turned within to listen? And I think that's critical. And that I got stuck on that. So Sally, I'm going to pass it off to you to answer Susan's question more directly.
Well, I'm just sitting here in complete agreement. I don't know that I can state it more clearly than you just did, Susan. But yeah, it's a matter of, if you want it, you go find it, right? And figure out what it feels like. And there's lots and lots of people who have that experience and that knowledge, so that if you don't know how to get to it yourself, you can follow the maps that have already been set up for these kinds of experiences. There are, religious, cultural type maps that have been set. There are gurus, there are, ascended masters. There's all kinds of people who have shown potential ways to get to the same destination. And, if you go looking, you'll find it.
Yeah, I think if you go looking the way, I kind of like to call it scaffolding, the scaffolding to hold you up on the journey. Even the spiritual journey is scaffolding where you eventually let that go and you're just the presence and you don't need all of those outer things, but those outer things sure are helpful, until you find or heal those distortions within you so that you find that connection with your own divine self, because that's the whole goal. The goal isn't to meet your guides and to, the goal, those are helpful, but then you even move beyond that where you become your own spirit guide. That is what leads you. And that's been the whole journey all along, is as we were moved out of divine source to our own divine spark, our choice or free will was to come down into this experience so we can find our way back if we choose. And you're right, the free will is always there if we choose that journey back to source and where we originally came from. And that's it. And it doesn't have to be done with scaffolding. I think someone who goes to the deepest, darkest stuff in their life can be at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, and finally look up and say, help. And then that inner teacher swoops in many different forms to come in and help you find your way back out of that free will mess that we've created on our own, by our own choices of doing things. We go, oh, shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have done that. But, I'm going to get there and I'm going to get stuck. So it's kind of a beautiful setup of inner work, in my opinion. So
I think the human experience gives us an incredible opportunity because we come up against resistance here because it's dualistic. That we don't, I think, and this is my understanding at this point in time, that we don't come up against so much on the other side, or what we call the other side. So there's an incredible opportunity for growth here that is going to happen in a much slower way once we're home. And as a recent guest we had on our podcast said, getting a human lifetime is like winning the $1 million lottery ticket. To be on the planet at this time with an awakening happening, it is pure gold. So I would agree with that statement.
very cool. Anything, Sally, or let me keep going?
Keep going.
Okay. All right, cool. So, I think some ways, if those of you who are listening to this have not said, well, I just don't have those experiences, or, oh, I love your eye.
Oh,
sorry.
on the wall. That's okay.
Yes, I love that. Okay. I'll tell you a story about the eye later.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, those of you that haven't found that inner teacher or say, none of that stuff ever happens to me, agree, ask, have the desire, spend time in stillness. And by meditation, doesn't mean you need to sit and om for an hour, because some people can get really messed up with technique. It is really just taking that moment and imagining the breath coming into the heart space, because that's where your inner teacher speaks through the heart space and the feelings. All right. And inviting it in to say, okay, I just want to find some peace in my life. And perhaps sometimes that's why we don't feel our teacher, because we have so much emotions or unhealed, unreleased emotions in our body that we can't feel the presence of spirit. And so then we have to go through this process of inviting spirit to clean us out or to heal those or help us release those unreleased emotions so that we can feel the presence of spirit. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, we're emotional beings at our core, right? And so you're right, expressing our emotions, releasing them, letting them pass through us is kind of the surrender that gets us more connected, right? And, I talk about doing it through meditation, but it's not the only way. You can do it walking. You can do it, there's 100 ways to get to the same location. You can do it doing the dishes. You can do it creating a work of art. You can do it reading an inspiring book. There's lots and lots of ways to get there. So I think I've just lost my train of thought. Where were we going with this?
Well, we were just asking about ways we can get there and how we can really connect in. So no, all of that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
And it really has to do with the individual. Some of us start out just really sort of holding on to the spiritual connection that we so inherently have as babies and children, and we stay with it through our whole lives. Some of us, through our conditioning, we forget and we let it go, and we have to either have some other thing that brings that desire, or we have trauma that forces us to surrender. But I think what I was trying to get at was that because emotion is such a key component of who we are, it is that sort of stranglehold on emotion that we've learned to put on it, that is what often keeps us from that connection. And so remembering that we're emotional beings first and foremost, and then that logic feeds our ability to understand those emotions, is a big part of becoming more connected. So much of what we feel is our message.
Right. And I agree with that 100%, because I think you feel the presence of the divine through your feelings. And we live in a world where we bottle them up and we cover them up with watching television and watching shows and, going into addictions and all those kind of things, because in some ways the world teaches us not to go there, when that's the very place we need to go, is into those feelings. Because I've had my greatest God moments by going into my deepest pain. And that is a key, to awakening, that invitation, and then being willing to invite your inner teacher to clear the distortions that are keeping you from experiencing that presence that's always that's already within you, because it's there.
Yes.
Well, my inner teacher keeps throwing this same phrase forward, which was said by somebody much greater than I: seek and you shall find. So you have to ask, you have to request of your inner teacher to step forward in your awareness. And it becomes clearer then.
Now, I have found when people go on that journey, and are willing to go on that journey, are willing to face their pain, their unhealed selves, their shadow selves, and make peace with it, and be able to even love that part, the deeper the inner teacher becomes more awakened within you, is that instead of running from it through addictions and through covering up and paying attention to politics and getting caught in all that drama and noise in the world, it is the stillness. And it could just be stillness of just simply sitting and breathing. Like you said, Sally, I love to meditate. I love to go inward and I love to go into that silence, because that's where, that presence is. And even that becomes, the noise goes away. It's just sitting in that loving space of I am, So go ahead, Gary.
Well, I was just going to say this just kept coming to me. I think I lost my thought and my phone's ringing. Hold on. Edit point. I'll come back to it.
Okay. Yeah. What were you thinking, Sally?
Oh, just like, again, complete agreement. Meditation is my happy place. because the stability that it brings me in the moment lasts throughout the day. Right. And so even if I'm emotional in my meditation, that happens occasionally. Like I will have emotions that arise during my meditation. And I know you didn't mean a thumbs down, Gary.
He was only thumbs down because he forgot the thought. So it'll come back.
Yeah, he's got a magic a Mac
Oh,
computer.
okay.
It does all kinds of fun things. But
Sometimes when I don't want it to.
sometimes emotions do arise, even in meditation.
Mhm.
But because I'm the observer of those emotions in the moment, I'm able to separate myself from them, which is part of a much easier way to process them. So I let them process, I watch them, I see them come, I see them go, and then I come back to that center point. And it's almost euphoric to be in that stable, focused point of really pure peace and joy. And it may only last a moment. That experience may be brief in the meditation. Often it lasts, but the thing is that the stabilization extends right throughout my day. And so I can tell days that I've meditated and days that I haven't, because I'm just generally more calm, more peaceful, more open, more giving, more loving on any given morning that I did my morning meditation. I felt that loving sense of self, and then it just lingers. So, even that is connecting to our inner teacher.
Very
right?
much so. Yeah.
Because our inner teacher tells us to love ourselves. And I'm not good at doing that on my own, right? It is a trust to that inner teacher and feeling it for moments of the day in whatever quiet moments I have. And it's been a great experience. It's been a great lesson at this stage in my life.
Right. I also think it's important to realize that it's okay to be not perfect in human form, because our judging ourselves, can block that inner voice. I hate myself because I did this, and you did what people do, what they do that they don't like, just to find some safety in life. Whether it's, depending on where you grew up, if you had a rough childhood and that kind of thing, you find safety, the human finds safety mechanisms to protect their heart. And it could be all kinds of things. It could be anger, it could be pushing people away, it could be things just because they did not feel that unconditional love. And at some point you have to turn around and say, it's okay for me to not be perfect. It's not okay for me to not have all the answers. I can just love me where I am. And I think that is a little bit of a block, just to say, you know what, I'm going to turn around and accept my humanness. And the perfection of my humanness, even in my brokenness, is a very sacred act to being able to connect with that inner teacher to help you find your way out of that brokenness, to find that peace and that love for yourself, even though all these dramatic things have happened or painful things have happened or broken things that we see in ourselves. It is all fixable with our inner teacher's help.
Yeah.
I think it's not about being perfect. It's about remembering who you are. That you're wearing this, call it a meat suit, and you're having experiences in a realm that is not your natural state. So, it is and it isn't. Something you were saying before about, well, about being caught up in the news and all of that stuff. What really helped me was remembering that the world's a passing show. And when you go within and that presence that's there in the stillness, that always is. that always will be. So that's the real. So anyway, that was the thought that I had lost and picked up the thread
It came
again.
back. Yeah.
Yay, yeah. Well, I
And
know. Go ahead.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
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 well,
you
I
go.
was just going to say, just don't beat yourself up, right? When you have a strong, heavy emotion, instead of saying, I must be a bad person because I feel this way, instead, just back up again, become the observer of the emotion. Feel it, let it come up, let it pass, but go, why did that emotion arise for me in that moment? What is it about me that I experienced this particular experience? And that way you start to look at it just more objectively. You stop putting the blame on other people. You stop putting the blame on yourself. You just go, what was that? Why did that happen? And then how do you love yourself through that experience? And again, that's all your inner teacher, right? Yeah. It's all because you have gotten out of the ego enough to observe. And it's all still you.
A nice tool that I've used, and it's something Suzanne Giesemann often says, is when something like that comes up, well, isn't that interesting? Because immediately you've stepped back from being emotionally involved with it and you're looking at it, you're an explorer, at that point. We're explorers on this journey through a human life. So the car broke down. Well, isn't that interesting? The tire's flat. Isn't that interesting? Why did that happen? Um, but instead of taking it on, we tend to take everything on emotionally. And I think it's nice to have something like that phrase that momentarily separates us from the experience. And so just my 2 cents.
Yeah. And the emotion wasn't bad or wrong. It
Oh,
just was,
yeah.
right? It was an experience that arose. It was an energy, right? Emotion, energy in motion. We've all kind of heard that phrase, right? And that's the point. It doesn't stay, it comes and it goes. And so feel it, let it come, let it go. If you can, don't necessarily react from it. But again, it doesn't mean that having experienced it was a bad thing.
And
It
that's
just,
where that phrase comes in. It keeps
yeah,
you from reacting. You're
yeah,
you're now put yourself in well, the explorer mode.
yeah,
Isn't that interesting? Why,
yeah.
didn't expect that.
Well, we draw into our lives the experiences that can best help us grow, even the painful ones. And a lot of time, the painful lessons come because I think our inner world, our inner teacher is trying to get our attention, you know, whereas we can get so lost in this world of day to day, going to work, feeding the kids, sending them to school, blah, 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 blah. And then there's this painful experience that comes along that almost forces us to look within, forces us to look within the divine, you know. And this is where, if you have the desire, I think the lessons get a lot easier because we're not ignoring the inner self. We're embracing the inner self to say, oh, okay, why did I draw this experience into my life? This was really painful, you know? And we have a choice in any given moment to go into ego and say, you know, with the bitchy voice in our head saying, well, why did they say that? And I should have said this and we should have done that and blah, 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 blah. That's the voice of the ego. Or we drop down into our soul and say, what am I trying to learn here? And who do I want to be here? And it shifts us out of the ego mind into the heart space to say, I drew this experience. And so this comes to responsibility, I think. Would you agree that we can choose to become responsible for everything that happens in our lives, and everything out there that's happening is a gift if only we choose to see it. And I don't care how painful it is.
And those painful moments are our greatest growth.
And I bet if everybody stops and listens and looks within themselves right in this moment and say, wow, you're right. When this happened in my life, I learned this, this, and this, instead of, oh, I hate that. I wish it never happened. And I think a lot of times we can easily go into blame for our parents or siblings that we had conflict with in the sandpaper in our lives and be a victim of that. And it's all their fault, instead of drawing it in and saying, okay, maybe I chose that at some level, that
And
experience.
therein lies our free will in action,
Mhm.
because we have a choice to
Mhm.
be a victim or to say, okay, what am I learning from this?
Mhm. How am I growing from this?
Yes, exactly.
Right. So when we have that invitation, that desire, we start going into stillness. I think one of the first ways that our inner teacher, believe it or not, starts speaking to is outwardly. It's like seeing the numbers 1111, 222, 333, or little signs in the outer world to get our attention, that says, oh, wait, something's going on here. And I really think it is because of that intention, that I'm kind of done being my life being the way it is. Maybe there's something out there that will interact with me and start guiding me in this journey, so my life isn't just a mess the way it feels right now. And so then that outer world leads you to books you need to read, or podcasts you need to listen to, and that's your inner teacher all along. It's not out there, it's leading you. I mean, how many times have you had where you've been thinking about something and working on something, and then this up in your YouTube feed pops this video that talks exactly about what you were thinking about and kind of validates what you were experiencing. Have you had that happen?
Oh, yeah.
All the time. But I call that living in the matrix, right? Like being aware that you are living in the matrix, that everything can have additional meaning, can be working for your benefit. And we've got a lot of even cultural shifts that are helping people to see that more and more.
And I think we forget how powerful of a spiritual being we are. And I'm not saying that from an egotistical place. I'm saying when we put a thought out, that thought has ripple effects across a wide expanse. We would be amazed if we knew how much. And I recently had told somebody this. A friend of mine who was a near-death experiencer said that a butterfly wings flapping in China ripples around the world. It has an effect. So it's that subtle. And so what we're putting out draws to us that reflection back to us. So,
Very good. So I think with those outer, which is really inner, but we need them on the outer world, those signs, you
mhm.
know, that just validate that we're on the right path by going inward, and they could be simple things, just as, hey, can you give me a parking spot? You know, and when there's really busy and there's one, somebody pulls out and you're right there, it just those simple signs of seeing multiple numbers, I think, is where it starts with a lot of people. Why do I see 111 a lot? Why do I see 1111? Why do I see 999? Why do I see 444? And it's just a little nod, I think, from your inner teacher, that is helping you. I do want to go back, Gary, to what you said. Uh, we are all sparks of source itself.
Mhm.
We're like a drop in the ocean of source, and everybody, I don't care where they are in their journey, how deep down the rabbit hole of darkness they've gone, there's divinity, a spark of divinity within them from which they start. And that part never dies. It
Right.
never dies. And so the journey is reawakening that within to help you clean out the mess that our free will has got us into by not following what felt right for our souls, but following maybe what the world thought we needed to be, or what our parents thought we needed to be, or what our schools or our teachers, and them trying to mold us into a path of, this is the way life is. You get a job, you get a good job, you make a lot of money, you get a car, you get a nice house, you have 2.5 kids, then you retire with lots of money, and then you die. And then you realize it's all meaningless because it was a different, you go, well, what did I do with my life?
That
Who did
that
I
that
connect with?
that sounds terribly boring to me.
Doesn't it?
It really does. And I also would state, I never heard anybody sit up on their deathbed and say, darn it, I didn't go to work enough. Never has anybody ever said that.
Mhm.
So, and what I mean by bringing that up is the things we think are important are not as important as we think. And that what really is important is coming into love and awareness of who we are and allowing that to radiate out to everyone that we encounter. So,
Right. Remembering that you're a drop of source in the
right.
ocean.
And not separate
Yep.
from anyone else.
No.
Most people, when they're on their deathbeds, say, I wish I'd spent more time with the people that I love,
Yeah.
right? I wish I had been more giving, more loving, something along those lines. If they have any regret at all. I mean, like, I would like to think that I'll get to my, end of days and actually not have any regrets. I don't know if I'm fully there now. I think I'm still healing things, right? There are still things that will come up that will give me a twinge that feel like regret. But that's what I'm here to work on. That's what I'm healing. And so hopefully, if we're all lucky, we'll get to that end of our physical lives and go, I have no regrets.
And you know what? Even once we get into the spirit world and we transition, it really didn't matter that we were all struck worrying about our guilt or whether we did this or whether
Right.
we did the right. We won't give a care about it because we realized, it was who we were that was important, not what we did.
Yes.
You'll have a greater perspective. And that's the one thing I have learned and heard the most from people who have transitioned, who have been able to come back and give us that type of information, is they don't regret things, other than they might still, have a desire to apologize, for something so that they can help healing while people are still here. Right. But for the most part, they get there and they go, okay, that was my experience. And that's why I think that it's totally fine for people who are not on a spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
They might just be on an earth experience path. And that's okay too. It's okay if they don't heal everything, right? Because that's an experience too. And a lot of times hindsight is 2020, right? We get to a broader perspective and then we go, oh yeah, I could have done that differently, but that's what I actually did. And I see from this perspective, what that changed or how that impacted myself or others around me.
And I think what you're saying is there's really no right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
It's individual and collective. It's individual in the sense that what works for me to open me up to my inner self may not work for you or the next person. Each person has to find their own way to that.
From their inner teachers,
Yes.
right?
From their inner teachers. Exactly. I was doing a session with a lady recently, and she was all worried about her husband because he was an atheist. And I said, well, don't worry about the atheist. He had a good heart, and that's what mattered. He was kind. People loved him, and he loved people. And that's far more important than whether he believed exactly the way you did, or believed religion, or believed in Jesus, or believed it. It was that he had a good heart. And that in itself is far more important than the the pathways we sometimes choose, and even though pathways are important, other people, and even the darkness is a path. It just takes a little longer to get there, but that's okay. That's your choice, you know?
I've heard it said by those communicating from the other place, um, that just being kind heralds across the universes that you're celebrated when you get there. Just for being able to find that in this world, to be able to find that within yourself, to express outwardly, um, is amazing. I mean, it's an amazing amount of work is done to get there, and that you are celebrated when you get home
Mhm.
for that. So,
Right. And for coming here and
yeah.
being willing to experience going down into separation, going through the veil and forgetting, and then going back into the spirit and go, oh, yeah, that's what I was supposed to do. That's okay. I'll do it next time, because we have an eternal life to figure it out. It's going to be really boring if we figure it all out in this lifetime, you know? And so we have an eternal life to experience, to do, to play around in free will, you know, and make our choices of, well, what feels right for me? Where do I want to go? And that's the beauty of all of this, is the fact that we do have free will to choose. The key is to be able to love the people that choose differently than we do.
And that's a big hurdle,
Mm-hmm.
but very achievable, is to see people that view the world completely different from you and to be able to still hold love for them. This is a lesson I've been taught in the last year or so,
Mm-hmm.
is to be able to just still feel love, even though views may be entirely different. It's okay. It's just where
Love,
people are on their journey.
That's right.
yeah, love. Sorry, I was gonna say love doesn't equal agreement. It's not
No,
the same.
Fair point. Love that point, is that it doesn't mean agreement. Love exists whether you agree or not. And usually the agreement and disagreement is our own perceptions of what we think the world needs to be. And then we stand on our soapbox and bang our drum and saying, this is the way you need to see the world. And I mean, even talking about it is like my body just goes, ugh, you know, it's like, no, none of that matters. It's, you've got a divine soul standing in front of you that may not know they're a divine soul, and being able just to love them, not fix them or get them to see your point of view. And that presence, or that love that you're holding, is far more important than any of the disagreements that we have in this world, you know. And I think we all get to the point that even the points of views are fallacies. It really, when it comes down to it, it doesn't really matter. It matters who I am in the world, not what I do or what I believe or what my position is or what I hold. And I think that's the struggle the world is going through right now, in a good way. Okay. People see this as horrible and we're all going to die, but really in a good way, because then we have this opportunity to choose differently. I don't like this. I don't like who I am when I'm like this. Maybe I need to change. And that goes back to the earthquakes in our lives to get our attention, that maybe we need to look within, because that divine spark is within us and can lead us and guide us, you know. So I see it as a perfect time. Who was it that said, was it Gary or Sally that said this is a perfect time to be here, you know,
yeah,
on the planet? It's a lottery ticket, $1 million lottery ticket to have to be a soul to come in at this time and be part of the shift that is happening, into moving into our, out of our heads and into our hearts, for those that choose. And again, those that choose to say, I don't want to go here anymore. I want to go here. I want to be here. And that inner teacher is your divine self that loves you so much and shows you the way or the path that leads you out of the drama, the pain, the struggles that we have. And it all is, you're right, Sally, it's that desire, that invitation, the asking Gary, the remembering to ask. So maybe we could leave it with this, that, when you are when life is giving you a pile of poop and you don't know how to deal with that poop, you just sit and breathe in your heart and say, I don't know where to go from here. Could somebody help? I don't care who it is, and see what happens, and see how your inner teacher, by that invitation that they've been waiting for you just to stop a moment, say, I kind of need some help here, and see how that unfolds in the way that it starts helping you in your journey to move through the pile of, or to shovel the pile of poop, because you can't not walk away from the pile of poop, but you can get a shovel and start shoveling it and deal with it, and helping you deal with that pile of poop. Go ahead, Sal.
Yeah. Taking that action is an important part, right? Because you can say, I need help, and then do nothing to take action on the thing you're asking for help with, right? And your guides may be trying to help you left and right. But if you're just still sitting there going, but I need help, and not taking some responsibility to act, in the direction you want to go, then you might be sitting in that pile of poop for a while, but that's what they inspire us to do, is to, what do we do next to shift our situation, to shift our perspective, to better understand what we're learning from any given experience.
Yeah. And sometimes the direction is get a shovel.
Sometimes it's get a shovel. Yeah.
And I think important too, keep that attitude. Doesn't have to be these exact words, but isn't that interesting? It takes you a step back. So you view whatever the circumstance is from a completely different place than being emotionally entangled with it completely. So that gives us a broader perspective. Isn't this interesting? What does it mean? And like I say, it's not the words, it's the intention behind those words, to hold that stance. And I think that's a valuable tool. And I thank Suzanne Giesman for that one. So.
Well, thank you. I think that's a perfect place to end. And thank you guys for joining us. And Sally and Gary, as always, love you guys. So we'll see you on the next Three Mystics, and we'll see what we dig up to talk about next time. So lots of love, everybody.